Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, Inspector General of Police says about 21,000 police operatives to be deployed for Anambra governorship election to appear before Senate committee over fraud allegations. Niger Delta Avengers suspend ceasefire now to vow to resume attacks on oil facilities in the region. Former National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki testifies in the trial of Olisamitu, says 400 million naira paid to the former PDP spokesperson followed due process. And Syrian army retakes last major stronghold of terror group ISIS as Iraqi forces capture one of the last towns held by the group.
And on business news tonight, federal government considers mergers and acquisitions between local and foreign construction players to increase patronage for local engineers.
On sports news, world number one Rafael Nadal puts doubts over his status for the ATP World Tour Finals in London after pulling out of the Paris Masters due to a knee injury.
And from Abuja, court dismisses application to quash charges of conspiracy and kidnapping against suspected kidnapper Chukwu Dumeme Onwamadike, otherwise known as Evans.
We begin with preparations for the November 18th governorship election in Anambra State, particularly now that the Inspector General of Police has announced the deployment of at least 21,000 policemen to the state for the exercise. Mr. Ibrahim Idris told State House correspondents after a meeting with President Buhari at the presidential villa that the police force is fully ready for the election. He says boats and helicopters will also be deployed to further beef security and forestall any breakdown of law and order. The IGP also commented on the order by the Senate asking him to appear before its committee investigating allegations leveled against him by Senator Isa Misau.
And obviously we are deploying a lot of police officers, almost about 21,000 police officers, to be able to provide security, adequate security at the Anambra election. We are deploying our boats, water boats, to take care of the waterways. We are deploying our helicopters, obviously, to take care of the area surveillance of those areas. And we are deploying our conventional policemen and special police units, obviously, to take care of the elections on the ground. And by the grace of God, we are going to have a successful and peaceful election in Anambra State.
Sir, what are you ready?
Obviously, we are like, if you look at it, these are legal issues. We are discussing with our legal team. Obviously, if there is need, we are going to appear for the sake of having a sort of the respect to the Senate. I will appear before them.
It's okay, sir.
Meanwhile, security agencies in Anambra State have read the riot act to politicians and representatives of all the 35 political parties participating in the coming governorship election. The agencies, led by the State's Police Commissioner, Mr. Garba Umar, are asking all the political parties to pursue peace towards a credible governorship election.
In about 3 weeks from now, the people of Anambra State will go to the polls to elect a new governor in an election they hope will be free and fair. The main concern, however, is the security of lives and property, and security agencies say they are not leaving anything to chance. Present here at the headquarters of the State Police Command are security agencies, representatives of the 35 political parties, civil society organizations, and officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC.
Use of hate speech that
For the State's Commissioner of Police and his DSS counterpart, the message is that there must be no violence, hate speeches, and thuggery, as the long hands of the law will spare no offender.
the use of dogs and keeping dogs in hotel for thuggery activities will not be tolerated. We have information that some political parties will bring dogs and keep them in the hotel. If any one of you is thinking towards that, please run away from it. We will not, and will not allow any one of you to keep talks, both import talks, those who don't have anything to do with the election.
One thing that we cannot run away from, politics or no politics, this country has laws. If you defame another person's character, we have enough provisions in our statutes to call you to order.
The meeting becomes interactive as representatives of political parties seek clearance to knotty issues.
Other political parties will be calling people that are supporting some other parties and going as far as going to tear down the billboards that they put on the streets just because they are not supporting them. Some have gone to the extent of making efforts to eject them from the office where they rented just because they are not supporting them.
With what we achieved today in the meeting, I am sure and I believe that every situation will be nipped in the bud and that the election will be conducted free and fair. That's our assumption for now. But we are not oblivious of the fact that there are some political parties who will want to, by all standard and standing, do certain things to breach the law.
At the end of the day, stakeholders say they are appealing to the security agencies and INEC to ensure that a free and fair election is conducted, one devoid of rigging and other malpractices.
Away from the Anambra elections now, the countdown to the February 2019 general elections in Nigeria has begun, and political parties are being encouraged to embrace the principle of internal democracy to strengthen the country's democracy. The UN Secretary General's special representative and head of the UN Office for West Africa, Mr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers, is also asking political parties to shun violence in the build-up to the polls. Mr. Ibn Chambers was guest on our breakfast program, Sunrise Daily.
What we have been doing, talking to the political parties and the leaders within the political parties to allow for more internal democracy and to be aware of this challenge of violence within competition in parties, so that in 2019 or leading up to 2019 there will be less of this kind of internal, inter-party, intra-party violence than was the case in 2015.
It appears the relative peace being enjoyed in the Niger Delta region is now being threatened as a group of the Niger Delta Avengers announces an end to the ceasefire deal it signed with the federal government last year. The group is accusing the government of working with a fraudulent group known as the Reformed Niger Delta Avengers, which they say is bent on helping the government to jeopardize the sincere efforts of the Niger Delta people to achieve economic, social, and political freedom. They say, quote, "We want to make it known to the PANDEF and the Nigerian government that our call for halt on Operation Red Economy is officially over." The group is also accusing the government of being insincere in its efforts to address issues in the Niger Delta. The militant group has declared a ceasefire in August 2016 after PANDEF and others, including Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, appealed to them to embrace peace and dialogue. From all indications, the announcement by the Niger Delta Avengers will most likely change the storyline on oil exploration activities in the Niger Delta region, particularly for the government of the day and the people in the region. While the government will be concerned about protecting oil facilities, the people, on the other hand, will be worried about their own safety. What this means is efforts by the present government and indeed successive governments have not fully addressed the problems in the Niger Delta region, leaving everyone asking the obvious question, what's next?
For more than a year now, there's been relative peace in the oil-rich Niger Delta region. That's because the ceasefire negotiated by the Buhari administration paved the way for the return of social activities and the consistency recently experienced in crude oil production. But all that is being threatened right now. The announcement of the cancellation of a ceasefire by the Niger Delta Avengers may just change and probably take the country back to the dark days of pipeline vandalism, militancy and kidnapping.
16 years for the struggle of this Niger Delta.
Before the ceasefire, the Avengers made several requests, some of which include the implementation of the report of the 2014 National Conference report, ownership of oil blocks in Nigeria to reflect 60% for the oil-producing people, and all oil-polluted lands in the Niger Delta. Proper funding of the Niger Delta Amnesty Program, takeoff of the Maritime University in Delta State, among others.
We want to say that there is no presence of government in all these oil-producing communities.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, on the orders of the President, swung to action, visiting the region to plead with the rest of youth and elders to accept dialogue and embrace a new plan by government. Professor Osinbajo then toured the entire Niger Delta region, and for once, the people gave him listening ears.
We are committed to making sure that the young men and women of the Niger Delta are properly engaged. We'll look at the amnesty issues. We'll make sure that amnesty continues. Some people have been trying to suggest that we close down amnesty. That's not true. We have made more provision for amnesty than has ever been made, and we have made more provision for social intervention.
Perhaps those promises don't mean anything to these youth anymore. They are threatening to crumble the economy, which the government claims is beginning to bounce back. And one way they want to do that is to cripple oil production, which is the country's biggest income earner. You wonder why this is happening. They claim the federal government is working with a fraudulent group known as the Reformed Niger Delta Avengers, which is bent on helping the government to jeopardize efforts of the Niger Delta people to achieve economic, social and political freedom. They also claim the federal government is insincere in its efforts to address issues in the Niger Delta, claiming that government is only interested in the crude oil deposits in the region and the lack of confidence in PANDEF, the group that brokered the peace deal with the federal government.
This is not the time to make war. No, this is the time to make peace so that we can ensure that we derive all of the benefits that are derivable from the center.
The implication of this threat may be unhealthy for the Nigerian economy at this crucial time. It has again opened another task for the Buhari government to again go back to the drawing board to review the Niger Delta issue, change strategy, or probably just talk to the right people that will help nip this looming crisis in the bud.
In other news, the president has directed that former Vice President Alex Ekweme be flown abroad for urgent medical treatment. Special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, explains in a statement that President Muhammadu Buhari authorized the trip after he was briefed on the elder statesman's health condition. He adds that the directive covers the immediate charter of an air ambulance for the emergency movement abroad, as well as the cost of treatment. The 85-year-old former vice president was said to have collapsed in his Enugu residence at the weekend. In part two, after the break, at last, a former NSA testifies in court in the trial of former PDP National Publicity Secretary Oli Sanditu. Stay with us.